Hello, this is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com, and today we're going to be speaking about traveling to and from a restricted state with a firearm. Now, just in case you might not be aware, you are actually able to travel state to state with a firearm, but there are certain legalities you want to be careful about before doing so. So specifically today, I'm going to talk about traveling from a restricted state into a free state, or from a free state into a restricted state, and more specifically through airliners, because that's going to be very different than driving, because driving could have its own legalities associated with it. So I put together just a notepad here that I'm going to go through of just different stuff to be able to take into account. We're going to start with packing, then actually traveling, and then when you get to your destination, things that you should be aware of. So let's start with packing. When you pack your firearm, you obviously want to make sure that it's unloaded, that there's no bullets in the case that you're going to be using, and the magazines and the gun should be again checked to make sure that they're completely clear. The last thing you want is to show up at the airport and have a loaded firearm on you, because even if you had all the best intentions and everything else was done correctly, you could get yourself into a huge amount of trouble of having a loaded firearm in an airport. So just be very careful that when you have the gun set up, everything should be empty, everything should be cleared, triple checked to make sure that you're not going to have any problems. Now, there are specific things you should be careful about when it comes to actually using a case. What kind of case should you use when you're deciding to go to an airport? There are two different types, one that I recommend and one that's perfectly suitable, but is not usually something I'd push you to do. The one that's not really recommended is these kind of very cheap $20 cases, $25 cases you could get off of Amazon. The case itself is sturdy, it works well, there's nothing wrong with it. The reason why I don't personally like using these cases is because they're TSA approved. Now, TSA approved can mean one of two things: that TSA approves it as a secure and good way to be able to store the firearm, but it also can mean that TSA approves it, meaning that they have a specific key they can use to be able to open it up. They do that to be able to examine it to make sure the firearm is safe. Now, that might sound like it's a good thing because it makes traveling a little bit easier, but that means that anyone's able to go off Amazon and also get the same key that TSA is using. So that means any of the workers from the time the gun is dropped off till your destination will be able to have that key and be able to open up your gun and potentially steal it without you knowing it. Because again, the key is a very commonly available key, which is why it's TSA approved. It makes it easier for them to have one universal key for all their locks. That's not something I like. The other way to be able to do it is to have like a Pelican case or another case where you'll put your own lock on it. So the only way they're able to get into it is with your key. The reason why I recommend that is because you'll have constant awareness of where your firearm is, the state that it's in, and the only way they're able to get into it is if they break it, which they shouldn't be, or once you get to the destination, you being able to open it yourself, and again, you have full control of that without anyone else being able to touch it. So I recommend going the Pelican route case and getting something similar to that, because although these cases are very convenient, they might be very slim, I don't like the fact that they have immediate access to your firearm without you being able to supervise everything that's going on. So now, when you get a case like a Pelican case, there's things you have to be aware of. So before we get to that, let's talk about what happens when you get to the airport. So when you get to the airport, you're going to show up and you're not going to be able to check in your bag at a regular conventional check-in area. There's going to be one of two places. Either it's going to be the oversized luggage check-in, or there's going to have like a specialty counter where you're going to declare specific items such as these. So you're going to be going there because they need a TSA agent to authorize that the gun is able to actually go onto the plane. So usually for me, the places I've seen is mostly going to be oversized luggage areas. So when I go to that area, you're going to say, I would like to declare a firearm. You never, ever want to use terms like, I have a gun, because that doesn't give them enough information, and that can make you look like a really bad person very quickly. And again, you don't want things to escalate around you. So the terminology I like to use to make it very chill is, I would like to declare a firearm. I have a firearm that I would like to be able to check in. That way, it's from the beginning a little bit more relaxed and they understand what's about to happen. The reason why I'm saying that is because although you as a gun person might be comfortable traveling with guns, you might have done it a lot, the person at the counter, especially in a restricted state, might not deal with it as much as you think, and they freak out with these things. So it's better just to keep everyone chill, everyone relaxed, and just be able to go through that process that way. So you're gonna go to the counter and you're gonna say, I would like to declare a firearm. The firearm is gonna be in my bag. They say, cool. And then again, depending on the competency of the person you're dealing with, they may or may not know the process of how this is going to run. The way it should run is that every airline is going to have a slip similar to this. This just happens to be from United, but every airline is going to have their own individual bag tag, and it's going to say that this has a firearm in it. In the back, it's going to give information like the date, your signature, and a signature from the agent that's at the gate saying that they examined the bag to make sure that it's locked. But by the way, they don't always do that, which is ridiculous, but they're not like very careful, just like anything else with the way their process is supposed to run. And also is going to write your flight number on the back of the bag so you have it. As well as there's also going to be a sticker associated with this tag that's going to be on the back that's going to be associated with your bag. So you make sure that if whatever happens, that the bag gets lost, a specific tag is going to be associated with that bag. So you make sure that they know there's a firearm in it specifically. So they're going to give you this. You're going to fill out the information on the back. This is going to slip into your bag, and then technically you're done. However, once the bag is given to them, it needs to be examined by a TSA agent to make sure that it's able to go through. So I will never leave that counter until the agent who did the examining comes back out and says you're good to go. The reason why is because if they just send it in and then for whatever reason they feel like there's an issue, they're going to call you back from your gate and you might need to go back through security and go through the whole process again just because they had a question for it. So until I get the green light, I don't leave. Now, when I actually get to the gate, I try to avoid wearing headphones or anything that's going to obscure my hearing, mainly because if they do end up calling you back, you want to make sure you know that instead of your gun being left in the airport and then you're already at your destination. And again, arranging it to get it back is a real pain. So make sure you're keeping yourself aware of what's happening on the announcements. Every airline might also have a regulation of how much ammunition you're able to bring and what type of ammunition you're able to bring. It depends again on the state you're going into. Like if you're flying into JFK, into New York, you're probably going to be beyond restricted to any conceivable limits. They're terrible there. But if you're going to be flying from, let's say, New Jersey to California or Texas to California, a state that's still restricted but has a little bit more leniency, there might be things you're legally allowed to have there that you would not be able to have in New York State. So that's just something you want to be aware of. Now, again, there's going to be a difference between TSA regulation and the airline itself. The airline itself might say you can only have this amount of ammunition, while TSA might have a different restriction on that. So you have to be able to check up the TSA regulation and the airline regulation to find out what you're able to deal with. Now, unfortunately, I have never been able to have a good conversation with any airline in regards to the ammunition regulations, because most of the time, the person who you're speaking to has no idea anything to do with firearms, guns, ammunition, anything. So what I've always ended up doing is, for me personally, if I'm flying to a class where I'm going to need to have ammunition for the class, I'd rather buy it at my destination than fly with it, because it can create too many complications if you're dealing with firearms and the travel distance. The only thing I've ever traveled with that worked out fine is defensive ammunition, so like hollow points and stuff like that. I keep it in the original box that the ammunition came in, and so far I've never had an issue with regards to the states I've gone to with that. So most of the time, if you're traveling with the original box it came in and it's secure, they'll be fine with it, and it just makes it easier that way. So quick story time for me, just to give you an idea of the understanding of firearms state to state. I was once traveling from California to Oklahoma to take a class. And when I was at the California check-in desk, I told them about the firearm and everything like that. And they kind of immediately go into like a whisper, oh, you have a firearm. Okay, fine, you have a firearm. Make sure to go to this section and travel over there. And they're very freaked out about it because, again, in the state of California where guns are a terrifying thing, they never want anyone to be able to be told about the guns that are available there. When I got to Oklahoma, I had the class, everything went well, it was great. I was flying back and I went to the airport, and that was one of the first few times I actually traveled with a gun. So I wasn't sure what the protocol was. So I said the same thing. Like I started whispering, I'm like, hi, I would like to declare a firearm. They're like, oh, you have a gun. Please check it in at the gun counter that's over there. Meaning they're a state that's much more free, much more open, much more understanding to the firearms usage, which makes it a lot easier to be able to deal with. Now, that won't necessarily be the case state to state or agent to agent. Again, the people that are actually working there might be the people that will make the difference in how your experience goes. So just be aware, try to be as professional and as chill as possible to make sure the process goes smoothly. Now, what happens when you actually land at your destination? There are two different places your bag might end up. No, your bag might not end up on the carousel like everyone else's bag because there's a firearm in it. However, it depends on what kind of firearm you're traveling with. If you're traveling with a rifle, so it comes in a huge Pelican case and it's locked and secured properly, that immediately will arouse suspicion to a lot of other passengers. So for that reason, they'll usually bring it to the oversized luggage check-in. So you'll actually have to pick up your gun from there or from another section separate from the carousel, because since it's very clearly not a regular piece of luggage, they don't want people to end up grabbing it and causing you problems. A note to that is that anytime I'm traveling, if right when the plane lands, I'm one of those guys that immediately takes my seatbelt off, grabs my bags, and is ready to book it. The reason why is because if you're traveling with a pistol or a handgun of any type, then that bag, since it doesn't look suspicious, it doesn't look like a rifle bag specifically, that could actually end up coming on the carousel first as a regular piece of luggage. Now, if someone mistakenly takes your bag, or for some reason it gets lost, or someone knows who you are and takes your bag, then immediately you lost a firearm. So I like to get as quickly as I can to that area where the carousel is to make sure I'm taking my bag and it doesn't get stolen, because that would be a problem. So it's not about just getting there as fast as you can. It's about getting there to get your bag as fast as you can and not having any issues. So This is kind of just an overview information. I'm sure I missed something. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave it below. But this is kind of just an overview of what the travel experience might be like going from a restricted state to a free state or vice versa. And hopefully this can help you a little bit in the understanding of what you're able to do. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.